So the best thing to do is to use the free stuff, and that is nature. The thing that's gone really unnoticed is grounding and earthing. So we're building up our lives in this built up technological, high frequency, high radiation world. And we really have to. And this is why I love living by the beach. I try to do that more in LA, but wherever you are, earth. Immediate red blood cells start to disperse. Can't even be measured. That's how fast it is. But the immediate effects of earthing and grounding have gone unnoticed.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Thrive State Podcast. I am your host, Dr. V, triple board certified MD and performance and longevity expert. And on today's podcast, we talk about a very important topic, a topic of medical procedures, medical enhancements that could potentially be destroying your health. This podcast goes over the potential dark sides of medical procedures and quick fixes that could potentially cause harm to our bodies. In this podcast, you'll really discover the path to true healing. In this podcast, we'll be sharing how medical procedures could be harmful, how unhealed trauma actually manifests as physical disease, the quantum science of healing through consciousness, and practical strategies you can do to reclaim your health and live authentically. So if you are new to the podcast, welcome in. This is a place where I bring in thought leaders and experts in the world of biohacking, longevity, and human performance. And if you are new, let me give you a quick shout out and give you a gift from my heart, some resources you could do to increase your longevity, your performance, what I call being in the Thrive State by going to thrivestatestarter.com, receive free insights, lecture notes, breathwork exercises to get you into the Thrive State. And if you haven't already, pick up a copy of my best-selling book, Thrive State, at thrivestatebook.com. Now, my podcast guest today has 31 years experience as a TV and radio presenter and a lifelong dedication to health and wellness. She is an engaging storyteller and a true gem of a person. She got a soul of an angel. Her name is Andi Lew. She's been seen in several television commercials, including Ultratune, Coles in Australia Post. She's also spoken at various events, including Soho House, Fitness, and Mind Body Spirit Expos. She's written various magazines, including the Australian Natural Health, Cosmo Pregnancy, and a regular on various podcasts and radio shows, including today's guest on the Thrive State podcast. She's also the wellness coach for Miss Universe Australia and Miss World, inspiring pageant contestants with the message of beauty with a purpose. She's performed in stage productions for over 12 years as an actor-dancer for companies such as Warner Brothers, Sesame Street, and Walt Disney. She's also the best-selling author of the book Treasured Chest. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy this enlightening conversation with myself and Andi Lew. Andi Lew, welcome to the Thrive State Podcast.
Hi! Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to have this interview with you. You're obviously an amazing man on the microphone. I've seen you at all of the events, the inaugural Ball for Maha, Biohack Yourself documentary premiere. And now we just decided we both live in LA and let's do this podcast. So
Yeah, it's amazing. I remember at the Biohack Yourself, no, actually not at the Biohack Yourself, at the Maha event, we were just looking at each other. I don't even know what ethnic makeup is. You've got
Right.
Lew as your last name. Is there Chinese in there? I know you're from Australia.
I love this question because I know you've got a bit of Asian in you. But every time somebody meets me and they hear the name Andi Lew, they think I'm going to be Chinese. But my last name is actually spelled Lew, and it's probably been shortened somewhere in World War II where it may have been Lewski or something. And it's a Polish background, and the W would have been pronounced with a V, so Lev, which is really interesting for anyone who's watching that may know how to speak Hebrew. But Lev means heart, and based on that, I am all heart.
Oh, wow. I can't wait to dive into that because I think what we are going to probably end the discussion with is probably the medicine of the heart. Before we get into that, what's also so cool is that now that we're sitting across the video cameras here, I can say that we are kind of twinning because we have moles in exactly the same spot or exactly the reflective spot of each other.
I was going to say that I noticed that. And by the way, it's not called a mole, it's called a beauty spot.
It's a beauty spot.
I love it. I love it. Well, we definitely did attract each other. Remember, everything is energy. And so here we are being reflections of one another, because that's all we are, is we are mere reflections of one another, which is so important to come from the heart. And remember that everything really is an illusion. The only true thing, even time is an illusion. The only true thing that we can tangibly say and we can never describe is that we know love is real.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Well, welcome to the podcast. My audiences are familiar with a part of the show called the 5 to 5. Quick questions I ask you. If you win this part of the show, since we are in LA, the next meal we get, of course, it's going to be a healthy meal, will be on me. So my question to you, Andi Lew,
I've got to
are you
win.
ready to play the 5 to 5? Question number one, worth 1,000 points, is what is one wellness practice you swear by every morning?
Chiropractic, and not every morning, but it's my favorite thing to do in the morning to start the day. Removing nervous system interference allows me to perceive the world so much better, adapt to stress, and coordinate all bodily functions. Ding.
Give one simple practice that someone can do on their own that's part of that routine.
Definitely when you wake up, the first thing you need to do is not touch technology. All right. So that is the one thing I tell all my wellness coaching clients: allow our eyes to adapt to the natural sunlight, because we are releasing the stress hormone cortisol, which sometimes can actually be good for you. Not all hormones are bad for you. And so that cortisol is a healthy reason for us to bound out of bed, move our bodies, stretch, grab some filtered water, room temperature, and then maybe an hour later you can look at your phone.
Oh, wow. You threw a couple in there, some extra credit points for you. So, question number two is a little bit of a trick question, because I think everything happens for a reason. But if you had to give your younger self a piece of advice, what would that be?
Everything is always working out, even when it's not. It's working for you, because life is about lessons and blessings. And when you understand that it's all just a test, and I realized that just about a decade ago, I was like, oh, this is all just a test. And I never tapped out. So here I am.
Well, that is one of my favorite quotes. It's from Byron Katie. You nailed it. It was like how life is always happening for you, not to you. Question number three is, what is one surprising health hack that you've seen working in the wellness industry for over 30 years that most people don't know about?
You know, it's something that can be done for free. I mean, we have so much amazing technology. We have the best doctors, drugs, surgeons, yet we're still the sickest country in the world, in America and in Australia. Why? There's something called iatrogenesis, and it's the leading cause of death in the modern world. And people ask, well, I've never heard of this. What is it? And I'm like, why? Because it's the leading cause of death in the modern world. It's hospital or medical error. So it's the wrong drug at the right time, or the right drug at the wrong time, or a hospital error. And so I'm telling you this because if you don't be proactive and you're reactive, you wait till it's broke to fix it, then you land up in the hands of the best doctors, drugs, and surgeons, chances are you may not make it. So the best thing to do is to use the free stuff, and that is nature. The thing that's gone really unnoticed is grounding and earthing. So we're building up our lives in this built up technological, high frequency, high radiation world. And we really have to, and this is why I love living by the beach. I try to do that more in LA, but wherever you are, earth. Immediate red blood cells start to disperse. Can't even be measured. That's how fast it is. But the immediate effects of earthing and grounding have gone unnoticed.
Oh, amazing. Now, you're a wellness expert, and I know I have tons of guilty pleasures myself, but what's one guilty pleasure or snack or something like that that you indulge in every now and then?
Probably dark chocolate. And, you know, ladies, when you are at that time of the month and you're like, hand over the chocolate or nobody gets hurt, and you just feel so desperate for it, there's some science behind why you're actually craving chocolate. You're craving the real food source of chocolate, which isn't cocoa, it's cacao, CACAO instead of COCOA. And cacao, the raw unprocessed version of chocolate, is very rich in protein and magnesium. It's the magnesium that's helping your uterus, like a muscle, which is also a muscle, to expand and contract in a more healthy state. So rather than only having foods that are high in magnesium at that time of the month or taking a magnesium supplement, try to actually stock up throughout the months and have the cacao smoothies or the cacao chia seed puddings or the dark leafy greens, and have that magnesium store going on.
Beautiful. And then if you were to describe your philosophy on health and wellness in 3 words, what would those 3 words be?
Prevention is cure.
Ooh, bam. And so
Bam.
with that, you win. And I was super excited because I was biasly wanting you to win because I want to take you out to lunch or dinner in Los Angeles. So
Aw. Do you know what? I feel like I've won because I'm such a talker, and you actually made me say something in 3 words, which I didn't think I was able to do.
well, thank you for joining us today. And I didn't know your story prior to meeting you in Vegas at the Biohacker Self premiere or in DC when we were at the Maha inauguration ball. But learning about your story, I can't wait to dive in a little bit deeper. You have
This
your
is the
best-selling book.
story. This
There it
is
is.
Treasure
Treasure.
Chest. It's
Yeah.
my most recent one. This is probably my most favorite health title. It's called Connected, a paradigm shift in how we view health. And we're in a paradigm shift right now, but this was written years ago, 320 pages of my life's work and passion and research and references. So I'm not just a pretty face.
so much more than that. So treasure chest. I mean, exposing the dangers of breast implants and the journey you went through in recognizing that you had symptoms from breast implants, the remarkable healing you got having them removed. So let's take people back a second. You live in Los Angeles. We know that implant surgeries are very, very prominent not only here, all over the world, but where were you in your life when you decided to get breast implants? And where do you think most people or most women are in their lives when they're starting to consider something like that?
Yeah, where, not why. It's a beautiful question, actually, because when I'm taking through my wellness coaching clients on creating their ideal well world, I often ask them to reflect on a time where they were when they were feeling their most well. Where I was in an interesting place because I was a newly divorced woman in her 40s. I'm 52 this year. Let's address the elephant in the room. Why on earth would a wellness expert put such toxic bags into her body? And this is what we're currently addressing now with my work and also creating this book into a documentary. We're in current pre-production stages. But what I've realized is there's an underlying theme of trauma that a lot of us BII, breast implant illness sufferers, have been voicing. And it's kind of a new #MeToo movement that's happening. And really addressing the why is crucial because there's an international narrative of, well, you did this to yourself, so, why should we help you? Which is really sad because millions of women across the world are dying. And I was dying when 8 years later, I realized I had an undetected rupture that 6 surgeons and an MRI didn't pick up. They all said I was fine, but hey, medicine's not a perfect science. The place that I was I was share housing in a really beautiful way. That's another health topic to bang on about, is that when we do get divorced, we think that we have to have our bleep going on all by ourselves. But, modern day communal living is very healthy. So I created that with my 2-year-old son, and I lived with a Pilates instructor and she had it, and it was all the norm. So there was this cultural fact of, we know that there's risks, but they're not talked about in detail. And so we kind of overlook those risks, and the drive to cover up my chest, if you like, with something that could put a distance between, is getting really personal, between me and my intimate partner would help me to sort of forget the trauma. And so when my diagnosing doctor, bless her, 31 years clinical experience as a medical doctor and an integrative medical doctor, she's one of my best friends, we co-managing patients and clients together, said, Bella, are you okay? And I was like, I don't think so. Why? She said, I'd love to consult you. And so, we discovered that I had breast implant illness, which I kind of refused to look at in the beginning because I knew that I would have to address the root cause of why I did that to myself in the first place. But indeed, it was life-saving. And that's a whole nother podcast.
So many things that you mentioned there that we can touch on. I would just imagine that what you say is one element of potentially what unhealed traumas allow us to do. I was a medical doctor, and 10 years ago, overweight, diabetic, had high blood pressure on prescription medication, thinking that a career is successful outside, a successful mask on the outside. My version of an implant, of living a life that's inauthentic to me, basically drove unconscious choices that created disease in my body. And I think what you have shared is a very similar manifestation of us not living in our most authentic form and coming back to a place that I think we could all remember, which is that we are loved.
And I think the most important thing is what we allow is what will continue. So you can kind of have this ripple effect of healing our trauma doesn't allow a crack for the darkness to get in and, squash the light. So it really is a message of empowerment and taking back control, like who's really in control, because then it doesn't matter what comes your way, whether it's a plastic surgeon saying you're 50, you're going to look saggy, or we need to give you volume, or there's something wrong with your flat chest, or you're a mastectomy patient, you need to reconstruct. That's a whole nother topic. And, those women who've chosen not to reconstruct, and we don't want to give $5 for a pink ribbon that's actually funding the product manufacturers and the organizations that are creating these new types of breast cancers, which are squamous cell carcinoma and anaplastic large cell lymphoma and others popping up daily. But I think this highlights, as you say, the intergenerational trauma that needs to be healed now so that we can move forward in a very positive way. And this is reflective of what's going on with our new government in America too, Make America Healthy Again, and the work that they're doing to lead the country to taking back control and also allowing them to have autonomy.
Yeah. Could you talk about maybe some of the emotions that you were going through as you were kind of considering getting your implant? What do you think were some of these core symptoms or wounds emotionally and mentally that my purpose in asking the question would be, what might somebody be listening now who might be considering like an augmentation to their body might maybe resonate with? No, I feel that too. And then my next part to that question would be, how can maybe people start looking at those emotions and potentially seeing alternative choice?
So there is no need for breast augmentation anymore, not just because we need to embrace ourselves in our divine body and remembering that what's behind your chest is your heart. That's why this picture shows me holding my heart and not my chest. And the words are intentional as well. But I think for the most part, we need to allow people who are watching that know somebody, because men and women sometimes see the BII sufferer as looking like they're fine. But in reality, there's a laundry list of really serious symptoms as this inflammatory driver, which kind of acts like a mast cell activation syndrome effect, starts to help the body to shut down because the natural detoxification pathways aren't working as well as they should or could anymore. And so you've got the liver, the gallbladder, there's like obviously the digestive system with SIBO gut, everything feels overwhelmed. And the way in which the body is designed to heal is through expulsion of toxins through an orifice. And so, I write about that in my book, Connected, because when you see a symptom, we've been taught through the allopathic model to operate or medicate, and that it's the big bad wolf. But symptoms are often a sign or a solution, if you like. But you need to facilitate that body to give it the right environment. And so really only removing those inflammatory drivers and that foreign body within the body is the only way to heal. So you've got symptoms like dry eyes is reported, inflammation, not just in the area of the implants itself, dizziness, headaches, blurred vision, dry eyes, inability to sweat, loss of libido, anxiety, depression, feelings of suicide. And I don't think it's just because of the emotional, like no one cares or no one believes me. It's actually because your body is slowly shutting down that you would almost rather be dead.
I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. If you are, I just wanted to let you know, join our community. There's so many free resources and a great community of people that desire health, happiness, human potential, to have more in their life, more health, more energy. And when you have those two things together, you could create more happiness, more abundance, whether it be financial, romantic, all these things in your life. And if you're just starting out, you don't know where to go, just sign up for ThriveStateStarter.com, because in there you're going to get a bundle of information that includes a longevity ebook, a longevity and performance resource guide, lecture notes that come from my keynotes at Google, at Fortune 500 companies, all the insights in that keynote in lecture slide form given to you. And then finally, breathwork. I share 3 powerful breathwork exercises to access calm, which really gives you clarity and peace during the day, to access energy if you need to wake up and really motivate yourself, and finally a breathwork routine that you could do every single morning so that you could be very intentional with how you create that day. You could find all this stuff delivered
free to your inbox at thrivestatestarter.com. And our community is growing. If you want to be a part of a community of people that desire the Thrive State, that are really in Thrive State themselves and help other people along with that, you could be a part of the community. You can get group coaching from me. We do breathwork sessions, meditation sessions, and you also get to drop in and participate in podcasts in the future. You could find more about the community at mythrivestate.com. That's mythrivestate.com. So check out those resources. You're not going to be disappointed. And please enjoy the remainder of this podcast.
So I think the serious issue of this, and this is again why we have to make this documentary, is that there's just not enough money being poured into allowing this to become an official diagnosis and researching and giving it a new name, because right now it's just called BII, but it's so much more than that. And you got to look at why. Why have we not given it a name? Like, so we can't have a successful suit against the product manufacturer or the original implanting surgeon. You know, there is a black box warning on these devices. Oh, there's just so many things to talk about. I could go on, as you can see, but it's really important to understand that it's a very serious mental condition, and not just women who have trauma have gone into doing this. I think it's just a cultural thing that we've been told that it's safe, but actually it's a ticking time bomb.
Yeah, well, thank you for really shedding light on this. As a medical practitioner that has studied functional medicine, we could say that the mechanisms of people experience various symptoms are very wide. Why there are different symptoms, which is why maybe some people have symptoms, some people don't have symptoms, and why there are different symptoms happening in each individual person. But what I can say is this: when you have something that is exogenous to the body, or something that your body doesn't normally have, it's going to create a response. Your body's going to react to that. You'll have inflammatory markers, a cytokine storm that's happening inside your body. You'll modulate or change your immune system. And anytime you mess with the inflammatory and immune system regulation that's happening in your body, you're going to start to create symptoms throughout your body that are both mental, that are physical, and emotional.
Because guess what? Everything is connected. I think, look, that's the premises of the wellness model. It's a holistic approach. Allopathy is a mechanistic approach. You know, we don't recognize that the knee bone's connected to the thigh bone, connected to this. But I think we have to remember that we need both. And that's important when we're healing the divide. And what we've witnessed is unity with the coming of an independent president who was running independently and then joined forces with our current president, Donald Trump. That, to me, the most important thing that we need to take away from that is the message of unity. It's the first time in history that you've actually seen two people come together for a divine mission that is for the betterment of others. And we need to actually start focusing on what we see that is good instead of picking at what is potentially something to fault, because, you know, that saying, you see what you seek, you shall find, right? So what are we really looking at? And is that our perception of the world? Because at the end of the day, perception is everything. And that's the final chapter in my book, Perception is Everything. And so I want to give you a fun exercise, if I can, on perception. So let's have a look at this page here. What do you see?
I see the letter U with some hearts.
Okay. If you have a look again, some people may see something else as well.
Sure, you could see maybe an elephant, bunny.
It actually says me. Have one last look and see if you can see me. Can you see me?
I see me now, yes.
See, it's you and me. And then the same thing here. Have a look. What do you see here?
I see both good and evil.
There you go. So the real science, and the reason why I'm giving you this exercise, is true science is quantum physics, really, because it's both. It's an equal and opposite of both. And so this just helps us to remove division, bring back unity, understand connection, seeing both sides of the coin. That's where we're at balance, not only in our perception, but in our bodies as well. So health truly is just recreating a state of balance, is it not? I mean, look at cancer, for example, if I may say, and full disclaimer here, this is not medical advice and I'm not qualified. This is just an observation that I'm making. But I believe that cancer is an imbalance of what's going on in your body, because what eventually happens is those that actually go into remission have radically changed their lives and restored the balance.
Absolutely. Well, as a medical doctor, I could say that what you say is completely true. And for people who have maybe gotten some treatments and had really stayed in remission, there are fundamental things that they have changed in their life, how they approach their life, how they approach the meaning of every single day. The choices that they make are fundamentally not turning on the genes that cause cancer in the first place.
Right. And then we can go down that path of, is it genetics or is it genetic expression? And then go into the topic of epigenetics, because we all do have a predisposition to X, Y, and Z, but that will only be expressed when we give it the wrong or right environment.
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned it, and in my book Pride State, it really probably echoes what you say in Connected. Everything is quantum, everything is energy, and our cells doesn't respond in a vacuum. Our cells respond to the energetic or epigenetic environment around it. And now that we know that, well, it is our consciousness and the choices that we make every single day that creates the hormones, the neurotransmitters, and even the non-physical energy that we deliver to our DNA that causes the genetic expression. And so therein lies the question, are we truly in control of our health? Are we making conscious choices about the messages that we're getting to ourselves in a moment-to-moment basis? Are we unconscious from what we're telling it by continuously potentially telling them the stories of I'm not worthy, I'm not enough, I am in danger, there's a saber-tooth tiger lurking behind me when I approach the world with stress and anxiety.
So, on that note, let's allow all of our viewers who are watching right now to be reminded that we are always in control just because we decide. And that if we have felt like we are not, it's because somewhere along the line we've been programmed, or there's been a narrative that said in another way. But if you look at the placebo or nocebo, the reason why placebo works is because you decided. And so, for some people, chiropractic may work for them. For others, it's acupuncture. For others, it's just this particular supplement. It's, red light, or it's the belief in prayer. Whatever it is that you decided is going to work for you, the reason why all these things work is because not only you decided, but I'm telling you right now, any practitioner that puts their hands, trust them, they better believe that it's going to work too. It's the two energies of both being believers and it's the intention that allows the healing to occur on such a level that we probably haven't even measured yet.
Yeah, in writing my book Thrive State, I basically looked at the behaviors of people in the blue zone. It was only recently, but that we started to see molecular changes in the cells as well as epigenetic changes in the cells, and we just started to be able to measure these things. And so what you are saying is things that I think we have known for centuries, and in what some people call the spiritual or the woo-woo place, but our intention, our decision, what we feel actually becomes the biological environment of our body.
And the more you start to research and learn, the more you realize you don't know, because it's miraculous. I would love to see a world at some point where we just all take a break from trying to make sense of it all and stop trying to measure it or understand it. And it really is just like the same frequency that love is, where it just sort of can't be measured or put into words too. And so love, divinity, or God, whatever you want to call it, grand organized design is a great acronym for it. It's all something to just hold dear. That's why they call it faith. Sometimes it doesn't need to be questioned. And that would be a really peaceful place for us to all be in at some point. But I do understand that desire to be so fascinated by the science. It would just be nice to have a break. But, with quantum physics, the pendulum, it swung really fast that way. And then to balance it out, it went the other way. And now we're doing a little bit of this. And so I'm just like waiting for the day, hopefully in my lifetime, where we just sit still for a little while.
Yeah. I think things like that, there's a hermetic law of polarity where there are basically just spectrums of opposites, but they're really present for us to understand where we are in the opposites. I could say that me starting to understand that I am loved, I could only fully start to understand that better because I was living from a place of I don't think I am worthy. I am not enough. And I started to live life from that place, but I don't
Mhm.
think I would have known that otherwise without having gone through that process. And so I think we're always in that vacillating place that allows us to understand each other a little bit more. And I think for anyone, their life's journey is a very spiritual process of coming into the world full of love, forgetting that we are loved, and sharing the beautiful process of remembering that which we already are.
And I think that gift of gratitude that you just had is already a very healing, response, because you're being grateful for that lesson and blessing so that you can evolve and ascend, from that space. Otherwise, we've all been there. We get stuck, or we have, and I'm very intentional with my language, we have been stuck before and going, why did this happen, to me, and all of that. So moving past that's beautiful. And as soon as you have that awareness, you're already halfway healed. So but it does take a very courageous heart, if you like. And because I'm a lover of language and I am an author, I love to even understand, you'll love this too. The word courage comes from the French word le coeur, which means the heart. So when you're being courageous, you're acting with heart. We are all heart. I mean, now look at this. We're ending the podcast where we began, with my name. We become our names,
I will have a last question in a second here, but I
Please.
want you to maybe just talk about what that journey and process is like. So many people come on and they talk about, just the courage and the decision to make a choice, and we were inspired by that. But I could tell you that my process has taken years. It's still happening, and I still have to make consistent choices that sometimes feels very difficult and feels very messy. What's the process like for you? And can you give maybe some practical expectations as to what the awakening process or the healing process is like?
Yes, thank you for bringing me back to that question, because you tried to ask it when you were asking me about breast implant illness and the emotional state, and you're coming back to it again because you still haven't found that closure yet. And you obviously see something very inspiring in me that you would like to learn from and emulate. And so I guess I've recognized that I've moved so far from it that I've almost disowned the heart. But you're bringing me back to that very painful place. And it was a lot of, I cried rivers. It was very challenging for a good 2 years. And I had to do the deep work and commit to it. I allowed myself to have an allopathic diagnosis of PTSD. I didn't want to be labeled, because you can become whatever you label. And it wasn't my trauma, it was the trauma that I experienced that I'm choosing to learn lessons from and ascend in. But having that diagnosis was great because it allowed me to slow down and focus on the things that I needed to do. And also, I was so scared of crying. My grandma, her last words were to me, "Tia smicha," which means in Hebrew, be happy. She knew I cried a lot and I was just tired of crying. But these tears held analgesic properties. That's what sad tears are. And you need that to flush, your system, and to allow the cleansing process. Even when I birthed naturally, you're literally leaking from every orifice. It's a spiritual journey. You're crying as your breast milk's coming out and your vagina's leaking and bleeding. And this is all part of life. And so life isn't just all the pleasure, it is the pain. And so instead of being scared of it, I dove into it, but with the right professionals. So you have to create a safe space and create your support network. And that support network for me were many, many neurological technique, chiropractors, zone technique, kinesiology type technique that were all intertwined with removing that nervous system interference and that trauma, coupled with some hypnotherapy type psychologists as well to soundboard that off. There were times where I didn't want to do any more talking and I just wanted to feel. So, I would sit in nature and let Mother Earth or the divine speak to me and try and see what was in my heart. And so everything felt very mission based, like a crusade and a calling. And that's when you really tap into, why am I here? The existential bummer of like, what's really going on and why? So, but that's when I think when you realize that all of this is for a purpose that's higher than yourself and you start to pay it forward, you make sense of the pain, if that makes sense. And then it gets easier. And I mean, here I am almost forgetting about it, but you are in control because you can seek out your team that makes sense for you, that you choose to work with. For a very long time, I didn't like working with male health professionals. And now here I am having beautiful healing experiences. All my chiropractors have been males. So I had the surgeon, Professor Diva, who did my explant. He was an empathetic male, comes from, I think it was fourth generation doctors, and he's got 4 daughters and a wife. That story that you choose to own on, like, how did I get here and where did this come from? And then being hyper aware of what it is you're healing, I think is such a personal journey. And so I invite you to just seek solace in that silence and bring in your troops on who you feel you're going to attract to help you with all of this. And it really is our responsibility to heal the intergenerational trauma for our future generations.
And I really do feel a huge shift happening around the planet, particularly ushered in by the new administration. Before I ask my very last question, where do people find you and your work?
Well, I do love to be on Instagram a bit too much. So slide into my DMs, Andi, ANDI.LEW, and I'll always answer you. You're just my little community and family, which has actually grown into quite a big one. But yeah, I'll often just even answer with a voice note because I'm too, time consumed to type. So voice notes are great. And I also have a website, andilew.com, ANDILEW.com. You can get all my books there. I'll sign them for you. I do wellness coaching and explant coaching, and hopefully our paths shall cross.
Most definitely. Last question for you. Over your 30 years in the wellness industry, what would you say has been your best medicine?
My best medicine, honestly, probably meeting people in real life. Today, I shot the pilot sizzle for my documentary, and these BII sufferers that are not able to afford their, $30,000 surgeries or whatever, and they're dying to be well, literally. Just the hugs that I gave them and got from them, that energy exchange was just nothing beats that. And yeah, reminding them how adaptive their body is and saying it emphatically, like in person, is just so powerful. So yeah, I mean, just being close touch is the best.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for the journey you have gone through and changing that into, a beautiful purpose. I can't wait to see the documentary. Can't wait to give you the prize you won from today's podcast by meeting with you live and in person. Andi Lew, thank you for your time and thank you for being on the Thrive Today podcast.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoy that episode of the Thrive State podcast. And if you're finding that this content is really helping you and your family members, please consider supporting our mission and our cause of elevating health, happiness, and human potential for people all over the world. You can do so by making sure that you subscribe to this podcast, sharing it with your friends and family members, and leaving us a 5-star review wherever podcasts are heard. All these things are going to really help elevate the show and to give us the resources to continue to bring more content just like this to yourself as well as the people that you love. If you haven't already, you might want to consider joining our community. We actually have a community where people get to engage with me in group sessions where we do breathwork, meditation, where we do challenges together, really to be able to get us access to health, happiness, human potential, so that we could have longevity and performance in our life as well. You can check out our community at mythrivestate.com. That's mythrivestate.com. And if you haven't already, pick up a copy of my book, Thrive State. It really gives you all the tools, the pillars that you need to create a blueprint to control the energetics of your life. Who are you? How you show up in the world? The choices that you consistently make create an energy in your body, and you can control this. And when you can control that, you also control the messages you give to your DNA that gives you access, again, to optimal health, longevity, and peak performance. And let me also just share a free gift to you. If you haven't already, please pick up my longevity and performance bundle where I share lecture notes, ebooks, breathwork exercises, and longevity and performance resources at thrivestatestarter.com. Thank you so much for being a part of this community. Thank you for helping us grow. Remember always, my friends, that you are your best medicine.